going to talk about George Foreman. George Foreman, he passed away at the age of 76. George Foreman, and this article is on NPR.org, fair use in NPR News. George Foreman, the fearsome heavyweight who became a beloved champion, dies at 76. And peace and blessings. And thank you for tuning in to the inspirational channel and news. George Foreman, the fearsome heavyweight who lost the Rumble in the Jungle to Muhammad Ali before his inspiring second act as a 45-year-old world champion and a successful businessman, died Friday night. He was 76. Foreman family George Foreman's family announced his death on social media, not saying how or where he died. A devout preacher, a devoted husband, a loving father, and a proud grand and great grandfather. He lived a life marked by unwavering faith, humility, and purpose. His family wrote, a humanitarian, an Olympian, and two-time heavyweight champion of the world. He was deeply respected, a force for good, a man of discipline, conviction, and a protector of his legacy, fighting tirelessly to preserve his good name for his family. A native Texan, Foreman began his boxing career as an Olympic gold medalist who inspired fear as he climbed to the peak of the heavyweight division by stopping Joe Frazier in 1973. His formidable aura evaporated only a year later when Ali pulled off one of the most audacious victories in boxing history in Zaire, baiting and taunting Foreman into losing his belt in one of the greatest fights ever staged. Foreman left the sport a few years later, but returned after a 10-year absence and a self-described religious awakening. The 45-year-old then pulled off one of the most spectacular knockouts in boxing history in 1994, flooring Michael Moore, 19 years his junior, with one perfect combination to claim Moore's two heavyweight belts. Foreman's transformation to an inspirational figure was complete, and he fought only four more times before moving on to his next career as a genial businessman, pitchman, and occasional actor. He was best known as the face of the George Foreman grill. And I had purchased one of those grills, pretty good. And going back to the article, which launched in the same year as his victory over Moore. The simple cooking machine sold more than 100 million units and made him much wealthier than his sport ever did. George was a great friend to not only myself, but to my entire family. Top-ranked President Bob Arum said, we've lost a family member and are absolutely devastated. In the first chapter of his boxing career, Foreman was nothing like the smiling grandfather who hawked his grills on television to great success. Foreman dabbled in petty crime while growing up in Houston, Fifth Ward, but changed his life through boxing. He made the U.S. Olympic team in 1968 and won gold in Mexico City as a teenager, stopping a 29-year-old opponent in a star-making performance. Foreman rose to the pinnacle of the pro game over the next 5 years, but was also perceived as an aloof, unfriendly athlete both through his demeanor and through the skewed racial lenses of the time. Jim Lampley, the veteran boxing broadcaster who worked alongside Foreman for many years at HBO, told the Associated Press on Friday night that Foreman's initial demeanor was an attempt by his camp to emulate Sonny Liston, the glowering heavyweight champ of the 1960s. At some point somewhere along the way, he realized that wasn't him, Lampley said. Foreman stopped Frazier in an upset in Jamaica in January 1973 to win the belt, with his knockout inspiring Howard Cosell's iconic call, "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." Foreman defended his belt against Ken Norton before accepting the fight with Ali in the now immortal bout staged in Africa by promoter Don King. Ali put on a tactical masterclass against Foreman, showing off the rope-a-dope strategy that frustrated and infuriated the champion. Foreman was eventually knocked down for the first time in history. In his career. And the fight was stopped in the eighth round. Foreman told the BBC in 2014 that he took the fight almost out of charity to Ali, who he expected to be broke. "I said I was going to go out there and kill him, and people said, 'Please don't say you're going to kill Muhammad.' Foreman said, 'So I said, okay, I'll just beat him down to the ground.' That's how easy I thought the fight would be." Exhausted and delusioned, Foreman stopped fighting in 1977 and largely spent the next decade preaching and working with kids in Houston. After his religious awakening, he returned to boxing in 1987 in his late 30s with a plan to defy time through frequent ring appearances. And he racked up a lengthy series of victories before losing to Evander Holyfield in a surprisingly competitive title fight in 1991. 3 years later, Foreman got in the ring with Moore in Las Vegas more for his celebrity than for his perceived ability to beat Moore. The champion appeared to win the first 9 rounds rather comfortably, with Foreman unable to land his slower punches, but Foreman came alive in the 10th, hurting Moore before slipping in the short right hand that sent Moore to the canvas in spectacular fashion. Lampley, who was calling the fight, named his upcoming autobiography, which includes a prologue about Foreman after his famous call of that moment, "It Happened." Foreman quit the ring for good in 1997. Although he occasionally discussed comeback, he settled into a life as a boxing analyst for HBO and as a pitchman for the grills that grew his fame and fortune. Much of the world soon knew Foreman as both a lovable friend and ferocious fighter. He started performing as this pitchman, this product pitchman with the big, ever present giant grin on his face. Lampley recalled, "When I was working with him, people would say, 'George is a big clown.' And I would say, 'Well, you can call him a clown, but he's actually a genius. He may be the greatest genius I've ever met.' And people would say, 'Well, genius, what do you mean?' I say, 'Well, check the bank account. If that isn't proof enough, I don't know what is.' So he was genius. He was a human genius. Foreman briefly starred in a sitcom called George in the 1990s, and he even appeared on the reality singing competition The Masked Singer in 2022. A biographical movie based on his life was released in 2023. Foreman had 12 children, including 5 sons who are all famously named George Edward Foreman. Legendary boxing champion, life changing preacher, husband, father, grand and great grandfather, and the best friend you could have. WBC President Mauricio Solomon wrote on social media, his memory is now eternal. May Big George rest in peace. And I think that is a wonderful tribute to George Foreman. His legacy and his accomplishments in life is definitely inspiring to young people. And, I remember George Foreman. I remember back in the day, my grandfather, he used to look at boxing when he used to cut my cousin hair. My grandfather, he used to uh, cut my father, my cousin hair, and that was the big thing back then. The men would look at the boxing game and tune in on HBO back then, and look at boxing. And, that was a pastime for black men back then, and other men, to look at boxing, and still today, some guys look at boxing, but it was like a family thing back then, with the men watching boxing, and those are good days. And hopefully those days will come back, where men would get together and look at a good game and look at football, especially black men. It's good to have family oriented environment, an atmosphere and men coming together, in a peaceful, loving environment, family oriented. And that's what these young people need. They need good role models, especially black young men and other young people. The best thing for children today is family. But George Foreman, he will be truly missed. I mean, he has a great legacy. I remember when he announced back then he was going to become a preacher. I mean, he did everything he wanted to do, and that's great. Hopefully those days will come back. Family will become the center of society, because the family is important, and the bond between a father and their son, that is important. Young men looking up to their elders, for guidance, that is truly needed today. And hopefully, and some families do still have that bond. Hopefully more families will um, continue that tradition of family, and men coming together, Yeah, and those were the times, and everybody get together for a family dinner, and things were peaceful back then. Hopefully those days will come back. Tradition, those good traditions will come back, and that's my tribute to George Foreman. He definitely was a great boxer. He was a great businessman. Like he was a self-made entrepreneur. He came up with the George Foreman grill. He was he was loving life and doing what he wanted to do. And he definitely is an icon for young people to look up to, especially black young men. It's more to life than listen to that hip hop and all that negative entertainment. It's more to life. Be proud to be a man, be proud of who you are, and take care of family. Sometimes in society today, it's like men are looked down on, for being family oriented. And sometimes women, the start of a society is the family. It always rests on the family, and the children are important too, because they need that stability in society, But hopefully, those days will come back. You know, um, family is important, even if it's a single parent. Just the loving presence of a parent, someone that loves a child, is important. And George Foreman, I give him that. He lived up to his name. He even volunteered to help the youth in where he came from, Houston, and that's a good thing. He did what he did volunteer work. If more successful people that were positive and had integrity would just work with these youth, and that would be good. George found Foreman. He definitely was a man of his time and a man worthy to be remembered. And that's my commentary on the passing of George Foreman. He will be truly missed. Peace and blessings, and you have a wonderful evening.